this, and this will be a pay-per-view review, though probably not the one you're expecting, but guess what? This is the one you're going to get, so too bad for those of you upset about it. But this will be the Dragon Gate USA Mercury Rising pay-per-view review. This is the pay-per-view that they taped in Phoenix during WrestleMania weekend, which I attended live. And night of the show, if you go back and you look at Instant Classics and C-Dude's kind of thoughts live on the show, you can kind of see how those were. And for the most part, pretty much the same way it came off on the pay-per-view, with one notable exception. But overall, I do think that this was not a great pay-per-view, really. I don't think this was the best effort. The matches weren't, nothing was bad on here, but nothing really clicked. It felt very flat for the most part, I think, on the show. I really think that the tag match with Jimmy Jacobs and Jack Evans taking on Paul London and Brian Kendrick really should have been subbed. I really wish it could have been subbed for the Quackenbush and Jigsaw taking on the Young Bucks match. I'm not exactly sure why Gabe, for those of you not aware, Gabe threw a pretty big hissy fit about the fact that TNA pulled the Young Bucks from this pay-per-view. And to this day, I'm still not sure why, because they weren't on the pay-per-view. They basically were on the show, but not on the pay-per-view. And I guess he felt like he needed them to sell the tickets, even though he didn't really sell that many tickets for this show, which is kind of sad, and is, kind of a growing concern, in my opinion, with Dragon Gate. They just got done doing 2 Toronto shows, much like they did the Phoenix shows, in which they did basically a double shoot. They did one basically house show, a DVD taping Friday, and then a Saturday pay-per-view taping. And I believe the DVD taping got a grand total of about 150 to 200 people there, and the pay-per-view got a little bit over 300 people at it. That's not good. This promotion has to have at least 500 people there to break even for the shows themselves, and then the DVD sales. And I'm not even sure how well the DVD sales are. We're not seeing a lot of discounts on the DVDs. We're not seeing a lot of good sales. I haven't seen a lot of people coming on here necessarily reviewing a lot of the DVDs. And there are some good DVDs. I don't talk a lot about Dragon Gate. I haven't bought a lot of the DVDs, but I do know that, the first 2 pay-per-views were said to be, I thought they were both good, and great. I would recommend getting them on DVDs very, pretty easily. They also have another DVD set, which you can get just from the Dragon Gate website, which is the Global Gate, which is basically 3 shows. It's a European tour that Dragon Gate did. And if you go to High Spots, you have to buy each show individually. But if you go to the actual Dragon Gate USA show, you can actually buy them together in one set for, I think, $20. And from everything I've read, I've not seen it, but from everything that I've been told, this is like one of the best sets you can get. Lots of awesome stuff, especially if you like Dragon Gate. So there's that, but you haven't seen a lot of that here on YouTube. You haven't seen a lot of that around the internet, other than the stuff that Gabe has sent out for people to review themselves, and I think that is not a good thing. When Dragon Gate started, a lot of people were excited. I was excited because it really looked like Dragon Gate at the time was on a roll. Even in Japan, they were coming off probably their biggest year, and then to turn around, it looked like they were trying to expand the U.S., something that I don't think a Japanese promotion really has tried to do, and really didn't come off very well. And the first show, the first couple of shows in Philly, I think did really well. I think part of that was because of the Chikara guys on there helped kind of fuel the show. And then, the same thing with kind of the first Chicago show. But ever since then, the shows have not been drawing as well. And even if you look at Evolve, and I know they're not really the same, but they're still, kind of gay book shows. Those haven't been drawing all that well either. And I think part of the reason for that is because if you look at kind of the Western talent that they've been using on this show, or on the pay-per-views, even though I love a lot of the Chikara guys, I really think that Dragon Gate USA needs to utilize more of the guys that Dragon Gate Japan uses as far as the Western talent, which we don't necessarily see those guys on the Dragon Gate USA shows, and I think that is one of the problems. But anyways, I just kind of my thoughts on that. Let's get on with the actual review. Show opened, pay-per-view opened with Shingo taking on Genki Horiguchi. This was pretty good. I wouldn't say good, but I thought it was pretty good. Part of it it started turning into moves, which is part of my problem when Dragon Gate does kind of, particularly even Dragon Gate Japan, excuse me, does singles matches, that it just kind of becomes moves. And I think that was part of the problem I had with this. It was really good. I really like Shingo. I think Shingo is very talented. I've pretty much enjoyed him since the first time I saw him. So and he's different enough from the rest of the Dragon Gate guys, which is pretty good. So pretty good match, not great. Then we had Paul London and Brian Kendrick taking on Jimmy Jacobs and Jack Evans. Live, they did this big, huge angle with Teddy Hart, who got hurt the night before, and they wound up kind of changing that and editing this to where it was basically they started the match with, or they did a little promo. This, by the way, this pay-per-view is probably the best looking pay-per-view Dragon Gate's done. It's also probably the best audio for the most part. The live entrance music, though, the entrance music audio was not very good, and that I have a problem with. But everything else audio-wise was great on this pay-per-view, which is a vast improvement, particularly when you realize that, you know, GoFunk and Gabe and all of the production guys are basically, this is their third year now doing pay-per-views, and you would think that the production levels would be higher, and they're not. Part of the reason I think that this show looked so good and was better that way was because it was actually filmed, basically, for those of you that were not there, it's basically a soundstage. It's basically where it was filmed, and so that probably helped make it look a lot better. So there was that. But they did a nice little promo package explaining what we were about to see. That you know, Paul London and Brian Kendrick had kind of upset Jimmy Jacobs by attacking Lacey, that sort of thing, and he brought in his buddy Paul London, and Jimmy Jacobs brought in Jack Evans, and they were going to do this tag match, and whoever took the fall would be gone from Dragon Gate forever. So that's where we started. Instead of the big, long Teddy Hart promo that we all saw live, which just sucked the energy out of the crowd and made the match, we didn't care about the match. So it did make the match better. It still was basically a lot of moves. It had some heat, but not a lot of heat. I'd say it was pretty good. As far as the pay-per-view was far better than it was live. This was one of those things where it was really, really much better on pay-per-view than it was live. Still wasn't, I wouldn't say good. I would say it was pretty good. And there was some botches, but you got to see Jack be Jack, particularly when, you know, Jimmy Jacobs was in there with Paul London, and Paul London definitely showed that, you know, he was not in the best of shape. He looked out of shape. He did some of, you know, his stuff, but you could tell he was rusty and all of this, so it didn't come off as good as it should have. So there was that. Then we had Tommy Dreamer taking on Jon Moxley. Again, this was set up through, you know, Jon Moxley basically calling out Tommy Dreamer. They had a match. Tommy Dreamer came out, cut a pretty good promo, you know, which they could do. Then they had this little hardcore match, and he had, I cannot remember her first name, Von Airy, a big mohawk, girl with big mohawk that wrestles in Pro Wrestling Guerrilla, or she wrestles and is a, you know, ballet in Pro Wrestling Guerrilla and other places. She came out with Jon Moxley, and when she came out during the pay-per-view, they never announced, when we were there live, they never announced who she was, and during the pay-per-view, they just said this mystery girl, which I found even stranger, but that was just me. But this was your basic, you know, Tommy Dreamer hardcore match. It was okay. It wasn't anything spectacular. I really didn't enjoy it very much. But it served its purpose, I guess, and it reminded me of every Tommy Dreamer match I'd ever seen in ECW. And so it wasn't the best thing in the world for me, but it was what it was. So there you go. Then we had Yamato taking on Yokosuka. I think no, it's not Yokosuka. It's Yokosuka. Yeah, that's it. Yokosuka. This was a very good match, I would say. Not great, but very good. To me, it got to the point, much like the opener, where it just started. They started hitting moves and no selling, and I lost. And then, you know, I lost. I kind of lost it after that. Again, it was a singles match. My problem with Dragon Gate, even Dragon Gate Japan, is they do these singles matches, and they do pretty much the same stuff they do in the tag matches and in the six-man, but it doesn't work the same because they start no-selling, and it just doesn't come off as good. So that's my biggest problem. And they hit a lot of good moves. Was a good long match. Eventually got a dead crowd into the match, but it took a while. But overall, it was very good, but it wasn't great. And the match really did need to be great. So there was that. Then we had what probably the pay-per-view was sold on. Why we all went to watch the pay-per-view, which was the Dragon Gate 6-man, which is something to behold. They really sold this as like a once, a special thing. CIMA Dragon Kid and Gama taking on BB Hulk, Inoki Doi, and Yoshino. This was awesome, not gonna lie. I got my quibs with some of the match, with parts of the match. There's some of it that I thought was and the ending I didn't really care for. But other than that, and those are two very slight quibbles, this match was awesome. If you've never seen one of these, this is worth checking out just to get, if you have access to the pay-per-view, I would say. But it's really not, and while I think it's a match of the year contender, and there's lots of good stuff on this pay-per-view, I really don't think the pay-per-view itself is just great. I think it's just really good, because I think everything just doesn't flow quite as nicely. It's one of those things where the matches are better than maybe the pay-per-view itself. Now, the DVD, when the DVD comes out, I would say buy the DVD, because you're going to get the Young Bucks versus Quack and Jigsaw, which is a very good to great match. Very good, would add a lot of value to this. And also, I think the JTP match, I can't remember who he took on, which was the opener, is good enough to where I also think adds a lot of value to the DVD, and I think is worth checking out. And I think that right there, if those matches had replaced the tag match and the Tommy Dreamer John Moxley match, I think this would be a great pay-per-view. But was not the case, so this is what we got. Still, very good show. Production-wise, this is the best show I think they put on, but it was kind of there. I felt it didn't feel that great, though they did make the six-man feel like it was an important thing. And if you've never seen a Dragon Gate six-man, this is kind of their specialty. They actually, their tag titles, they actually have the six-man tag titles, which are pretty prestigious in Japan. Same thing with their tag titles. Kind of like how Chikara only really has their tag titles, and that's their important titles. So it's kind of along those lines, which with the style that they do, six-man matches just fit perfectly with that, and it just flows, and it's just this marvelous, beautiful thing to see when they're all going, and to see it live was just amazing. But overall, I'd give it a 7.75. Like I said, not great, but I thought pretty good, or very good. Very good. Like I said, you have one standout match. I think it needed just something else to really make the match just kind of stand out. And the ending of the after you see all these amazing moves, and for the main event to end the way it did, this was as well. But like I said, the DVD though, I haven't seen the DVD, of course, but I would definitely recommend picking up the DVD just for that extra tag match, because that extra tag match is very good to great, and is definitely worth going out of your way to see. And that with the main event, I think, just adds a lot of value to this. So there you go with that. Like I said, probably not the review some of you were looking for, but too bad. This is what you're getting later.